It's Wednesday, my dudes, and welcome back to the second part of the most poverty-infested Pokemon starter tier list on YouTube. Today we're going to be getting into the second half and finishing up our tier list. But before we do that, just a couple things I want to throw out real quick. So this is actually my second time recording this second half. I actually ended up losing my voice when I originally recorded it, and I just wasn't too happy with the sound. On top of that, I did make one minor adjustment to our list. I did bump Sceptile down to the second tier just because when I was originally shooting the second half of this, I noticed that I ended up actually putting a lot of Pokemon into the GOAT category, and I kind of wanted to go back and keep that spot a little bit more special and kind of spread some of the other ones out. Other than that, though, everything from the first video still stands. We'll go back through our different tiers here real quick. At the top, we have GOAT, which these are Pokemon that I will go out of my way to actively build a team around with, or as soon as they're available in a game, I'm going to give them a spot on my personal team. Then we have the nice category. These are Pokemon or starter Pokemon that I absolutely love. I think they're phenomenal. They're definitely ones that I would add to my team unless there is something better that I have available on it. However, I think they're extremely solid choices, and I also feel like they have a pretty iconic reputation, at least for me, in the games. Then we have the mid category. These are starter Pokemon that I feel they check all the boxes that you want a starter to have. So even though it's in the middle of the road, I do still think they are very good. However, for one reason or another, they don't rise to any sort of great heights for me. They're ones that, I'll use for a playthrough here and there, but I'm not going to go out of my way to keep them as like my final team. Then we have the It Exists category. This is for Pokemon where, I've used them for one playthrough, and that playthrough was enough. They're Pokemon that, for me, they personally don't do anything. I wanted to use them to see what they were capable of and just kind of walked away from it feeling underwhelmed. Then we have the 343 Industries tier, which is our lowest tier, and these are ones that I genuinely feel like have maybe ruined a part of my childhood. They're just Pokemon that I have, I've used them, I've tried to like them, but for whatever reason, I don't like them. I'm perfectly glad if, they're just there to sit in a box for the rest of eternity. But we're going to jump back into it. So we left off with Generation 5. So we're going to pick up with Generation 6, and to start us off with, we're going to be talking about Delphox. So Delphox was a Pokemon that whenever I was able to use it in Scarlet and Violet, so for those of you that don't know, I played up until Generation 3, then I kind of got out of Pokemon. I did mess around with Diamond and Pearl on ROMs, but I never actually finished them. And I didn't get back into Pokemon until Sword and Shield. So for me, a lot of my opinions on the starters have come from the fact that they've been slowly reintroduced through Scarlet and Violet. But Delphox was one that I was really, really interested in being able to use. I thought the idea of kind of like a magical fox was pretty cool, and then I actually got to use it. So for me, Delphox, it suffers from a couple different things. One of the things since coming back that I've kind of noticed is the psychic typing wasn't nearly as good as what I remembered it being. Of course, I found that out in Sword and Shield, and I do know psychic types. They had been nerfed pretty much since Generation 2. However, I felt that there was always something that made them a little bit viable. However, for Delphox, that's where it completely fell off for me. So a couple things. I like most of Delphox's design. However, just the biggest thing for me, and this might be really petty, is I don't care for all the hair that's coming out of the ears. I feel like that's something they could have done away with completely, and it wouldn't have hurt the design whatsoever. On top of that, it was kind of another speedy special attacker, and I feel like a lot of fire types in that kind of go that route, at least from the starters. And to me, this one, it just kind of felt like it was at the bottom of the barrel. So at first, this was a Pokemon I was excited for, but I think at this point, it's going to wind up in the it exists tier for me. I wish I could place it higher, but after using it for an extended period of time in Scarlet and Violet, I just kind of feel like that's the spot that it's deserved. But coming up next, we have Greninja. So Greninja is another one that I feel like it's earned its reputation. I understand why it's so iconic and what has made it so popular. I think that this is probably out of all the other starter Pokemon, the one that best rivals Charizard in terms of its iconicness with the series. So I will say they knocked the design out of this Pokemon. Now this is the shiny version of it, which I'll be honest, I love. It was just the first card that I could grab of Greninja. But I love its design, especially the fact that it's got a black shiny. Those are personally my favorite shinies. And on top of that, I just really like the way that it played. To me, it had a varied enough move pool. And then on top of that, now I know it is nerfed now in Scarlet and Violet, but its ability Protean, I thought was absolutely amazing. The fact that you could get out there, your opponent knew you were going to start off as a water and dark type, but you could switch that with every move. Granted, now it's you get one switch and that's it. But I thought that was really cool. And I like the fact that it did a pretty reasonable job at being a mixed attacker. Excuse me, I know for myself, I did end up kind of specializing more in the special category or special attack category just because there were more moves that I liked for that. So I'm sure I could be playing Greninja a lot better. However, that being said, I've always enjoyed it since I've used it. And on top of that, I feel like this is one of those designs that's iconic. It's going to be really cool, you know, as long as Pokemon continues to be a big franchise. I think this is one that, you know, people in the future are going to love, and it's going to keep that same reputation. So for me, Greninja is going to go up into our goated tier. And after a bunch of positivity, unfortunately, Kalos did not hold up too well. Then we have Chestnut, which this one's a pretty big stinker for me. So unfortunately, Chestnut, I feel like it kind of suffers from a couple different things. For starters, its design, I don't care for it. I think there's definitely worse designs out there. I'm not going to say that this one is terrible by far, but just whenever you look at Chespin and then you look at Chestnut, I feel like they could have gone maybe a different way and gotten a better design out of it. However, that being said, you know, the design isn't the only thing that hurts it for me. I'm just not a big fan of using this Pokemon in games. Again, with my playthrough of Scarlet and Violet, you know, I did sit there, tried to take a lot of time to learn how to play Chestnut, and I just wasn't excited with it. I felt like there were just so many better Pokemon out there that did what Chestnut can do, and they just do it better. And I genuinely actually appreciated them more than what I did Chestnut. On top of that, I just didn't really feel like the grass fighting typing was something that I was really interested in. Grass has definitely grown on me. Fighting, I've never had a problem with. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites, but it's not a type that I feel is bad in any means. But ultimately, that being said, this Pokemon, it's just been a stinker for me. So, unfortunately, it's got to go into the broken childhood category. Then we're going up to Gen 7. And unfortunately, I feel like things are going to be kind of on a downhill slide from here. So we have Incineroar. And let me just start off by saying, I understand Incineroar has been an absolute menace in the competitive scene. That being said, you know, I do appreciate the competitive side of Pokemon. However, this tier list, it's all my personal thoughts and feelings on it. Incineroar, like I said, I understand that this thing is probably, I guess in terms of like gameplay mechanics and everything like that, the best starter Pokemon of all time. And I feel like it does have a lot of things going for it. It is very good on the competitive side. It also is probably my personal favorite type combination of fire and dark. I love both of those types. They're fire being my favorite, dark being my second favorite. However, I've never had fun playing Incineroar. To me, Incineroar, it's very much a Pokemon where I feel like there is one really good strategy for it, especially if you're trying to play competitive. But I think straying from that, I'm just not a super huge fan of. And like I said, for me, I'm not someone that's out there, playing competitive Pokemon. I will do link battles, here and there, but it's just more of something that's casual fun for me. And I just never felt like Incineroar really lived up for me, at least on the more casual kind of fun side. The big thing for me about Incineroar, though, is its design. I'm just not super huge on it. I don't think there's anything wrong with cats or felines, and I like wrestling. However, that being said, I just didn't feel like they blended as well as what I was hoping they would. So for me, Incineroar, it's in the it exists category, like I was harping on. I completely understand that thing has earned a spot as one of the best Pokemon of all time from a competitive standpoint. However, it's my personal feelings on it. And for me, I'll always have that respect for it, but it's kind of a bit of a stinker. Next, we have Primarina, which this actually might be a weird one. So, I actually kind of like Primarina. I understand that there is kind of a big amount of hate that this Pokemon gets, and I will say it's understandable. So one of the biggest reasons I see Primarina kind of get a lot of hate is because it definitely does appear to be more feminine, where a lot of the other starters in that, it's a little bit more ambiguous. You could see it being either male or female. But with Primarina, it does definitely lean more on the feminine side. For me personally, I'm not bothered by it. I think actually, if I remember, most of the Primarinas that I've had, they've all ended up coming from Poplios that were female. So I guess I've never felt anything weird about that. So for me, that's just not a big issue. I do think it would have been one of the perfect starters to give it gender differences, like maybe, as corny as this sounds, having the male one maybe a little bit more on like the King Trident or Neptune, like get us a little bit of Little Mermaid stuff in there, since it seems like Pokemon, at least with Scarlet and Violet, they kind of snuck in a little bit of a Lion King reference in the Indigo disc, which I made a short on if you're curious about that. But overall, yeah, I actually really enjoyed Primarina. I did play with it through Sword and Shield whenever I was able to get it in the Isle of Armor. And I actually really loved the type combination of water and fairy. For me, it was just absolutely devastating offensively. And on top of that, I think the design's pretty good. I think it is an interesting design. There are definitely better designs out there, and there are other water types that I do enjoy using more. So I am going to put Primarina in the mid category. Again, I don't think that, for me at least, there's anything wrong with it. I think it does everything that I would want a starter to do. However, it just didn't do it as well as what I would hope. And finishing off the Gen 7 starters is Decidueye. So for those of you that watched the first part of this, you're probably already aware of where I'm going to go with this. So Decidueye, I don't mind it whatsoever. I'm just going to say right now, this is going to go into the mid category. The reason being is Decidueye does have a Hisuian form that I think was just a lot better than its base form. What I do like about Decidueye is I love its design. I love the fact that it's almost supposed to be kind of like that Robin Hood or, Skyrim sneak archer that we all ended up playing through, even though we told ourselves we're going to try and build, a different character. But sneak archery is just so powerful. So I do love kind of the reference that this Pokemon's design has to that idea. That being said, though, I just felt like there are, again, better grass starters out there that I've enjoyed using. This is one where, again, playing through it with the Isle of Armor expansion, I did enjoy it. I saw no issues with it. However, I 100% think that there are better grass starters out there, not just in the design category, but also for me in the playability category. So yeah, Decidueye, we're not going to spend too much time on it. It's going to go in the mid tier. Again, I think maybe if Hisuian Decidueye didn't exist, we'd probably bump it up into the nice category, but we're living in that timeline where Legends Arceus is a thing, which I think most people are completely okay with. And I'm actually glad that they were able to go back and improve on that design. I think that's awesome. So leading us, though, into Gen 8, we have Cinderace. And so this is, of course, the generation that I got back into Pokemon with. And I'm going to be completely upfront and honest. Whenever I first started playing this game, there was a reason why I was buying the cards before I was actually playing the game. Even though I did end up, going out, buying a Switch, buying both Sword and Shield, I was hesitant on starting it up. And for me, kind of the big reason is I wasn't super huge on a lot of the starters in this generation. And honestly, I think a lot of that, unfortunately, tied back to Cinderace. So Cinderace, again, I understand that it has seen some success on the competitive level, and I do think it is a Pokemon that generally a lot of people are pretty fond of. However, for me personally, it's kind of a stinker. It's not going to go in our very bottom tier, so don't worry about that. I'm just not super huge on its design. I'm not a big fan of soccer, or for those, since I do know there are people in other countries that watch this, that would be your equivalent of football. I'm just not a big fan of that particular sport, so having a Pokemon base its entire design off of that, I just really wasn't a big fan of. I did like the fact that it did get Libero, which I thought was interesting for a fire type, and especially with some of its coverage options, I felt like that was a nice kind of way to make it viable in a lot of situations. That being said, though, this is a Pokemon that I have done several playthroughs with. So even though I'm going to throw it in the it exists category, it would be at the top of it. This is one where I feel like if we had a borderline between mid and it existing, this would be perfect for it, because I do think it is better than a lot of the Pokemon in the exist category. However, for me, it doesn't quite hit everything that I would want a starter to do. And that's mostly purely the design. I think gameplay-wise, I've enjoyed this quite a bit. But kind of like Incineroar and even Delphox, it all kind of goes back to the design. I have respect for, like I said, what this Pokemon has been able to achieve. But for me, it's in the it exists category. Coming up next, and this is going to be probably another controversial placement, like Primarina, is Inteleon. So, full disclosure, Sobble, that was the starter that I ended up picking with Sword and Shield, and I don't regret it whatsoever. So, in a weird way, I actually enjoy this Pokemon's evolution arc. I think the fact that, it starts off as kind of like that small, overly sensitive child that kind of develops into those, that emo phase that we might not be proud of, but, we did go through. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Music from that time was fantastic. And then it transitions into like a super cool, successful artwork. Or, sorry, not artwork, but super successful, like secret agent, James Bond, CIA, PsyOps kind of background. I thought that was really interesting. Especially because I guess for me, I've kind of seen people go through that, where maybe they were thought of a certain way when they're younger, but then, whenever they hit adulthood, they have a glow up, whether that's, they went from being that kid that everybody thought was just, they're never going to amount to nothing, and then they turn out to be this super cool, humble person. So I actually thought Inteleon did a very good job of representing that, and I think that's honestly the big reason why I loved it. I do love its design. I did play with it a good bit. I don't think it's, of course, a monster by any means within the game, but I genuinely enjoyed it. It stuck around on my team. I think if it wasn't for one of our next water types showing up, it might have even stuck around on my Scarlet and Violet team. That being said, though, I am going to end up putting it in the nice category. It's something where I love it. I think there are some options that have come out since that I do prefer over it. However, I'm very happy that it exists, and I think Inteleon's amazing. Then we have Rillaboom, and this is honestly another one that really grew on me. So I didn't have an issue with Grookey, and Thwackey, I thought it was that middle stage evolution. If you don't like it, that's okay, because it's going to end up disappearing real quick, and you're going to be spending most of the game with Rillaboom. And I honestly thought, and probably still do, I think Rillaboom had the best design out of the Galar starters. I love the fact that it's essentially like Harambe with a drum kit. I thought that was pretty phenomenal design. However, what steered me away from this, Pokemon was the grass typing. I'm just not super huge on the grass typing. However, Rillaboom was one of the ones that did end up kind of helping me change my mind on that. And the big thing is, again, shout out to the Isle of Armor when we were able to get Grassy Glide for this, on top of its hidden ability, Grassy Surge, which set up grassy terrain. And so now you have a absolute physical beast of a monster being able to swing, a stab priority move just as soon as it enters the field. And I thought that was pretty amazing. I know it is a little bit gimmicky, kind of like Superior. However, I do think it has a little bit more viability than just being like a contrary user. I do think Rillaboom is a Pokemon that does have some other good qualities to it, and it's one that I've genuinely enjoyed using. And just like Inteleon, I think its Gigantamax version, it was just badass. So for me, Rillaboom, we are going to put it in the nice category. So now we're going to travel back in time a little bit. Not our timeline-wise, but Pokemon timeline-wise, and go into Hisui, or the Legends Arceus games. And we're going to start off with Hisui and Typhlosion. So on my last video, I spoke pretty highly of Typhlosion, its base form. However, I did say that, later on I did kind of fall out of favor with it, and that was purely because of the fact that it had the same stat line as Charizard, and I felt like between the two, of course Charizard's the golden boy of the game, it's also, or golden boy of the franchise, and it's also my personal favorite. So let's be fair, Charizard does get a lot of those regional gimmicks, and that, we got to be able to print money whenever we need it. And because of that, Typhlosion, unfortunately, was one that didn't get a lot of support, and so I always felt like it kind of lived in the shadow of Charizard. And it really, it was a Pokemon where it was a fast, get it out onto the field, start spamming Eruption, and I felt like that was really all it had to offer. Thankfully, with Hisui and Typhlosion, they did fix that. So they gave it the secondary typing of Ghost, and on top of that, they really went all out into the fast special attacker, which with Hisui and Typhlosion, I think is phenomenal. You still have that ability to get out onto the field and spam some pretty devastating eruptions. However, you're also opened up to some other fun ways of playing with it. For me, the thing I love about Hisui and Typhlosion is its ability to, burn Pokemon with its signature move, Infernal Parade. And on top of that, the cool thing about it is you kind of get the effects of Will-O-Wisp and Hex all in one. So if you do manage to have a Pokemon that's afflicted by a status condition, Infernal Parade's damage doubles. And Infernal Parade already has the chance to burn Pokemon, which lowers their attack stat, which, I believe Hisui and Typhlosion doesn't have the best defense stat, so it does kind of help out in multiple ways. And I think they did a really good job of kind of getting Typhlosion out from under Charizard's shadow. For me, this is one that I genuinely love it. You know, if it wasn't for another Pokemon on this list having the exact same typing, this would probably have been something that made it to my Scarlet and Violet team. But that being said, I am still going to put it in the GOATed tier. I think they took, a personal childhood favorite Pokemon of mine, really brought it back up into a form of relevancy, and I love that. And the praise for the Legends Arceus games is not going to stop there, because next we have Hisuian Samurott. Again, I liked regular Samurott. I thought its design was pretty cool. And I think adding that more malicious, kind of evil twist on the Pokemon paid off in dividends. I love the fact that this thing looks a little bit more feral, a little bit more brutish, especially kind of given the fact that in the games, Legends Arceus is taking place at a time where like people are still trying to learn how to live with Pokemon. There's still a lot of fear that's expressed of them in that game. And I think Hisuian Typhlosion did a really good job of capturing that. Again, I also love the typing of Water and Dark. I think it's a phenomenal typing. And the other thing that has actually made this Pokemon stick on my Scarlet and Violet team is the fact of its move, Ceaseless Edge, is just bonkers. If you play with it in Legends Arceus, it does do kind of some damage here and there, some chip damage by setting up almost kind of like a form of Stealth Rocks for that game. And in Scarlet and Violet, it then lays Spike. So you get, a stab boosted move that can also be affected by its hidden ability Sharpness, that also sets up a free layer of spikes. This has been one of the Pokemon that I've loved to absolutely run as a lead. I think it just has so much viability. And I think they fixed a lot of the original issues that I had with regular Samurott with Hisuian Samurott. So, of course, this one, it's going into the GOATed tier. I've already, like I said that this one made it onto my Scarlet and Violet team. And that's for no small reason. I absolutely adore it. Then we're coming up to Hisuian Decidueye. So, just going to say right now, this one will not be joining its other two in the GOATed category. However, I will say that I feel it's 100% a much better version of Decidueye. So I already really loved Decidueye's appearance, and I think changing it from kind of the sneak archer over to like a more honorable samurai, I loved it. Decidueye got a glow up. That being said, too, it also did have a very wide move pool that I loved using in Legends Arceus. I did mess around with it a fair bit in Scarlet and Violet. Again, I didn't think it was good enough where I wanted to kind of put it on any long-lasting team of mine, but it is one that I have no problem pulling it from the box here and there just to kind of mess around with, or using it in some of the different Terra raids. So it does get this, it does get to stretch its wings, no pun intended, a little bit. And for that, we're not going to spend too much time. It's a glow up from the regular Decidueye. It's going in the nice category. And now on to our final generation and our most current one. Good old Scarlet and Violet, Paldea, Lord Thickus himself. So it's no secret I love Skeledirge. I chose Fuecoco as my first Pokemon for my Violet playthrough, and I haven't regretted it since. I will be honest though, whenever I did start the game and I originally got Skeledirge, at first I was kind of a little bummed out. I thought it kind of had a little bit of a goofy appearance, and I'm not gonna lie, there was a solid point where I was like, I can't wait to maybe kind of throw this in the box and maybe I knew they were going to be reintroducing Charizard at some point. I was, I'll be honest, I was thinking like, I can't wait until I can swap it out with that. However, going through, finishing up the game in that, and learning how to play Skeledirge is actually what really, really sold me into it. So Skeledirge has become one of my favorites of all time. For starters, I love the typing Fire Ghost. I think it's such a fun typing to use. But unlike all the other fire starters, I like this one plays completely differently. So Skeledirge is meant to be more of a bulky fire type. So it has pretty good defense, really good special defense, and HP. On top of that, your signature move, Torch Song, you do gain a special attack increase every time you use it, which does allow you to invest quite a bit into your bulk and then still be able to power up your special attack just through a standard match. So I really do love the fact that this thing, you can get it onto the field and it can be such a nuisance to get rid of. Plus, now owning reptiles, I do love them, but sometimes they do seem a little empty-minded at times. And I think Skeledirge's hidden ability, Unaware, definitely does a pretty good job at representing that. I think it is just such a pretty cool thing. So Skeledirge, for me, I'm glad to say it's going to go in the goated category. I do think in later generations, this will be one that I can't guarantee that it's always going to be on a team, but it's always going to be one that I'm going to have a very good setup for it sitting in the box, and it's going to be allowed to get out and breathe here and there. So, Skeledirge has earned a spot up in the goated category. Then we come to Quaquaval. So, Quaquaval, I don't think its design's terrible. And I actually do like how it plays in the game. So I think the whole idea of you can have a Pokemon with Moxie that uses, or has a signature move that increases its speed every time you use it. I think it's a very quick and efficient way to make an absolute menace on the field. That being said, though, I have lost a lot of the excitement for it. I don't think it's a bad Pokemon by any means. This is one where I did come up with a maxed out stat version of it that I do use quite a bit for Terra raids. However, that being said, I think at this point, now that, I've had some time to digest and let some of those like honeymoon glasses fall off of the games, I think it belongs in the nice tier. It is a good Pokemon. I do like it. I think they did a phenomenal job with this generation starters. For me, though, I think it's appropriately in the mid tier. It does everything that I want a starter to do. I genuinely enjoy using it. For me, there just are ones, though, that have gone above and beyond. So, Quaquaval, you get to sit peacefully in the mid tier. Again, I feel like mid tier does sound a little kind of harsh, but again, these are ones that, like I said, they check off all the boxes I want for a starter Pokemon. However, for me, what really separates it is whether it's design or playability, which I feel like at the higher tiers, it's a combination of both. They've gone above and beyond that. But I always do hold starters. I feel like I do kind of grade them a lot more harshly than I would other Pokemon. So that mid-tier, do understand that is a tier full of Pokemon that I really do love. And I say that because that's also where Meowscarada is going to join Quaquaval at. Again, this is one where I think its design is really, really interesting, and it has probably one of the most busted signature moves of all time with Flower Gift. The whole idea that you have a move that will always be critical and will always hit, I think is absolutely busted. Not Urshifu hit through Protect busted and still land critical hits, but still pretty phenomenal either way. The only downside I really have with Meowscarada is its typing. I do love me some dark types, and grass has grown on me. However, I just don't feel like there are two types that really synergize all that well together. I definitely felt like during playthroughs there were a lot of times where I was just getting kind of smacked by weaknesses that almost to the point where it felt like there were more Pokemon that could deal a good bit of damage to me than ones that would deal either neutral or not very effective damage. But that being said, though, I have enjoyed Meowscarada. It is, again, a Pokemon that does get to flex itself out in some of the Terra raids that go on. And for a while, I was trying to think of a way to add it to my team. However, I quickly kind of fell out from that. So Meowscarada, it's going to go in the mid-tier. Again, mid-tier. There's nothing wrong with them. But anyways, that is our tier list. So please let me know down in the comments, what are your favorite starter Pokemon? Why are they your favorite starter Pokemon? Also let me know ones that you dislike. Are there reasons why you like some of the ones that I felt pretty strongly about? Or are there reasons why you strongly dislike ones that I love? Please let me know. As always, thank you guys for watching. We are going to do a quick recap of where everything's at. But if you could do that dirty trifecta again of like, commenting, and subscribing, it does help. And I want to thank you guys for all the support. But before we end the video, let's do a quick little recap. So in our bottom list, or at our bottom tier, ones that I feel will negatively impact your childhood are Meganium, Emboar, and Chestnut. In our It Exists category, ones that, I've done one playthrough with and haven't been too thrilled of it, we do have Delphox, Incineroar, Cinderace, and Torterra. Almost forgot about him. Then in our mid-tier, ones that I feel knock everything out of the park, or they hit all the standards that I want them to, we have Typhlosion, Empoleon, regular Samurott, Serperior, Primarina, Decidueye, Quackavole, and Meowscarada. In our nice tier, we have Blastoise, Feraligatr, Blaziken, Ditto. That should actually be Swampert, but unfortunately I didn't have any Swampert cards. So we do have our big boy Mudkip there, but that's what the Ditto's for. Sceptile, Inteleon, Rillaboom, and Hisuian Decidueye. And in my favorite starters of all time, we have, of course, our main man Charizard, Venusaur, Infernape, Greninja, Hisuian Typhlosion, Hisuian Samurott, and Lord Thickus himself, Skeledirge. But thank you, everyone. Hope everyone's having a good week. We'll catch you on the weekend for another video. But have a good week, and we'll catch you next time.